Good evening for a quick Sunday show, 7:40 p.m., Sunday, November 16th, 2025. Mark Kulak, Houstonic.live. A little bit of talking, a little bit of an intro, and then I'll play a quick song, and then I'm going to do a reader letter and that will be it for today. The binder of letters continues to get very heavy, which is very good. Very good sign. That's a great way to be able to communicate. Houstonic.live, HOUSATONIC.LIVE. The P.O. Box 505. Please do not spend the extra money on express shipping. Unless, of course, you're being chased by the authorities and you have a USB drive to drop off or something like that. It just takes me a long time to get around to things. I could give you the numbers on the amount of on-process information I have, and it wouldn't even resonate as possible. So I'm not going to, but it's a lot. As you can see on the screen here, November 14th, what's that, day and a half ago, Donald Trump, quote, blowing Bubba, unquote, message and Epstein emails under scrutiny. As you know, I don't really cover the Epstein communications, the emails, etc. on this channel, Houstonic.live, research and archival channel with a heavy focus on overdose awareness. Was there a man named Jeffrey Epstein? Yes. But as have said millions of times before, this subject, just think about it logically. There's just no way, no matter what was done, that a few people can run the world based upon compromise operations. It just can't happen. It just can't. Can you compromise somebody? Yes. Can you hurt people, kill people? Yes. Can you kidnap people? Yes. Can people be sexually abused? Yes. Is it possible that without fail, you can run one after the other, every person in government, and control an entire nation or the world through that methodology? No, it's impossible. Eventually, you're going to meet people that either you can't, or even if you did, will say, I don't care, and still talk anyways. It's just not possible. So the constant elevation of this topic under the premise that it needs to be spoken of first because it's about control of the world, it's just illogical. It's illogical, and you can just think about the logistics of it. It is logistically impossible. So my apology, I said a quick apology, is because I wanted to apologize for getting a little bit off track over this past week and a half or so. Not totally, but when this topic gets promoted heavily, it really irks me very deeply. Whatever the extent of the abuse was, keep in mind that by far and away, without question, the largest quantity of people are pulled into sexual operations, sexual businesses, prostitution, and so on because of poverty, because of crumbled families, because of a lack of faith, and because of probably, and this ties into the other three, drug addiction. It has nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein at all. And I get very upset, of course, and I don't like to talk about my own situation that much. I mean, enough so that people understand, but it's not fair for his memory or his friends who are still with us and family, other family, to make my show about that. That's not fair, and I don't want that. But it irks me that people so disingenuously suggest they are doing what they're doing and focusing on what they're focusing on because out of a concern for children, when their actions show they do not prioritize the things which impact the most children. And if you look at thumbnails, you'll see pictures of Epstein smiling. You'll see people laughing. They're telling off-color jokes. They're filling books of jokes. They're having a good time. They're having get-togethers. They're having laughs. And these are not the actions that match people that genuinely believe, are supposed to believe, or we're supposed to believe, are motivated to save children. If someone really believes that children are currently being impacted, injured, killed, lifelong damages, etc., from some ongoing thing or something that just happened last week, they should want to, I guess you could take this out of context, but they should want to find the people doing it and rip out their throats with their bare hands and watch them bleed to death. That's how angry people should be. The last thing that people should be doing is making funny thumbnail pictures. Now, I didn't say that as a threat. I'm trying to convey how people should behave. And anyone that's finding any laughter or companionship or fun talking about these types of subjects is inherently either just not thinking clearly, or they're so close to other people who aren't thinking clearly that they don't know what they're doing, or they themselves are a pervert. And I mean that very seriously. So when this subject comes up, I get mad. Sometimes I'm just throwing spaghetti on the wall. Like, what could possibly stick to get people to see what is going on here? So I get a little angrier. I get a little more testy. My videos, I use the S word more abundantly. And I don't apologize for being upset. Okay. I guess I apologize that it just keeps getting the better of me. In this case, I guess I just apologize. I have to remind people, Bio911Truth, BIO911TRUTH. You can do the hashtag. You can go to bio911truth.org.com. And although it was drug overdose awareness that got me into this mess that you see right here, and then I combined it with my other life skills, life lessons, etc., as an analyst, as a researcher, as an archivist, I'm definitely off my game. And I've been trying to find ways to latch on to this nonsense and this runaway horror show of deception and distraction. And distraction in the sense of, wait, these are things which happened 10 or 20 years ago. Which is another criticism I have, by the way, if I may tangent for a moment, about the whole conservative Republican truth movement. It doesn't talk about people that are even alive anymore. If you turn on shows where it's talking about JFK, RFK, Epstein, Charlie Kirk, I'm like, I don't know the key to being relevant, but I think one of the keys is to talk about people that are alive. Maybe? I don't know. But anyways, so much is focused on crimes involving people who have died, murdered. I definitely go back in time quite a bit with respect to history and trying to understand the history that led us to the current point. But the people that we review on this channel, many of who have also died, are a big part of that trajectory of understanding the scientific trajectory anyways, that got us to where we are today. We don't bring them up because they were simply involved in the conspiracy. Many times we bring them up because people don't even know who they are, and they are incredibly important. So the first part of the show here is, I apologize for this getting the better of me. And it's going to keep happening. I guess I'm willing to admit it's one of my weak points. And it's weak because it makes me mad that people don't behave in a way that is consistent with what they say that they are talking about. And those words were chiseled by Jonathan Cooey of Gigo and Biological. He says it, and we bounce ideas back and forth, okay, and refine them. I don't even know who inspired it first. It doesn't really matter. But he definitely chiseled it and withered it down to like that. People should act in a way that's consistent with what they say. And if they don't, there's a problem. That means they are very unaware, or they're just lying. Anyways, I'm going to do some quick hellos in a minute. I have a letter here. Very well-written letter. Thank you so much. From someone, let's just say S. They have some complimentary things to say, and then they have a very respectful rebuttal for being in disagreement about atomic weapons, nuclear weapons, etc., which is fine. I'm keenly aware that most of the world doesn't agree with my position on this. We're definitely not going to resolve global truth on that topic, but there are some fun things in here to respond to, and thank you for the support that you sent in with it. That I think will maybe clarify a couple of misunderstandings around. All right, I'll be back in a minute. Thank you for joining November 16th, 2025. Mark Kulak, Houstonic.live. Christy. Hello, Arthur. Arthur, long message here. I'll read it. I try my best. Arthur always has good stuff. I try my best with other theories that corroborate policies, incentives, outcomes other than depopulation goals, misuse of medical assistance, and dying. Excuse me. So rude. See? So unprofessional. That's raw casting. That's burp casting. I'm sorry about that. Ignoring drug overdoses leading cause of death in young. It is absolutely, at least within the United States. There may be some nations where it's actually war or famine, but in the United States, by far and away. And then it dawned upon me that Ben Shapiro may be saying this for the express purpose of getting Nick Fuentes fans to double down. I don't know what's going on between them. It's definitely getting a lot of the spotlight. Oh, I just went from one message to another. See what happens? You get the long messages, and I got them confused. But thank you to, I agree with that, Arthur. And then there's the big dispute between Nick Fuentes and Ben Shapiro, and everyone says a few things that you agree with, and then a whole bunch of other nonsense. Ben Shapiro saying housing shouldn't be affordable. Boy, is that a loaded statement. That is within the United States, or I should say, it's not the government's job that housing should be affordable. Oh, boy, that is a loaded statement. Is it the government's job to ensure that resources are spent on U.S. citizens first? Is it the government's job to make sure that people aren't getting hosed with respect to property taxes? Is it the government's? I mean, there's so many factors that go along with that. Housing affordability issues. One of my favorite things to watch on YouTube are the housing supply in the United States is terrible. I understand that there's a housing shortage. I don't know how that's figured out. There are many buildings which are unoccupied in the middle of the United States of America that have simply been abandoned. Now, they are not ready to be moved into at all. They need a significant amount of work. United States housing is in terrible shape. We do not use building construction methods in most areas of the United States that are designed to last. It was really designed for affordability and efficiency. Newer homes, while some may be very energy efficient, have siding so thin that you could poke a pencil through them. There's tons of older housing in the United States that needs a vast quantity of labor to bring it up to code, to safety. It's filled with mold and bugs. And then, of course, do we have the right labor force? I mean, there's so many factors that go into this. And it's nice that it's getting some visibility, though. If we have a nation where young people cannot have no option of having a house other than to not have children, then we have a problem. And I understand it's a slippery slope to communism and socialism. To be totally honest, I'm actually not prepared to even facilitate, to host a great discussion about that topic, because there's just so many factors and so many disciplines. I mean, I can talk about housing quality and housing maintenance and so on, and building codes, but when it comes to all of the other stuff, we already have too many people on the internet that are masquerading and pretending to be more than they really are. And the last thing I need is to just become another one of those faces. So I'm not even going to do it. Let's see. Hey, Entropy Mark, do you have any thoughts as to why people between ages of 30 and 39 appear to be most affected by the opioid epidemic? Yeah, quite a few. A lot, actually. The tendency for people to become addicted to drugs tends to be higher when people are younger. Now, that specifically refers to people in their teens and their 20s versus 30s and 40s. Many people who have died in their 30s and 40s right now, and remember that's an average age, okay, of how would you say of overdose deaths. That does not mean that it's specifically those people, but um, so for me, when I first had OxyContin, it wasn't OxyContin, it was hydrocodone. I was probably, let's see here, 35. I was probably around 35. Is that right? 34 or 35. Yeah. I had a back injury when running, and I think that's the first time I was prescribed that, and I was on it for several months. And if it wasn't for a disciplined doctor, I probably would have eventually turned into doctor seeking and med seeking. So I was pretty close myself. I understand how easy it is just to turn that corner. And it's nothing that I was seeking necessarily. It was just, matter of fact, I don't think I've ever had I might have had one Percocet when I was a teenager, and I had my wisdom teeth pulled and I got nauseous. And that was it up until that point in time. So the introduction into my life was a sports injury. For many people who become addicted, it starts off as a sports injury usually, or wisdom teeth. Instead of getting ibuprofen or here's some ice and deal with it, the many doctors have been encouraged to use hydrocodone or other types of opioids, etc., which in turn then leads to, because eventually the prescription is going to get cut, leads to med seeking. Many people come out of the U.S. military. The addiction rate tends to be very high for people who've been in U.S. military. And the one misunderstanding is that many people, they understand about OxyContin. They understand about the opioids, which are available as painkillers through Purdue Pharmaceutical, for example. Very few people will die taking OxyContin specifically. You'll need to take a lot, and the more you take, the more you grow a tolerance to it, which means you take more and more, and eventually it just becomes expensive. So when people become seriously addicted to opioids, they will eventually start to seek heroin or something else they can find on the street. In many cases, there are many people who know they get fentanyl as a a fake affordable heroin. You can get a whole lot more opioid by getting heroin than you can by using an OxyContin, which leads to another demographic observation, which most people miss out on. The overdose rate for men is much higher than women. Why is that? And it's a very uncomfortable answer. The answer is women can sell sex. And that is the answer. That is the answer. There are men who will resort to gay prostitution. They will do it in some extreme cases. But eventually, men can't do that, okay? So they have to buy cheaper and cheaper and use riskier and riskier stuff, whereas women of even middle-aged who participate in prostitution can get better drugs. Now, unfortunately, I should say it, maybe that's the right way to say this, but this horrifying type of conversation could be heard by more people, that the overdose rate of men is much higher than women because women can sell themselves and usually get better quality OxyContin or drugs that are less likely to kill them, because pimps don't want their women to die. There you go. But this is very seldom spoken about because right now the mainstream media and most of the alternative media is congested with people that are having a big laugh about the possibility that Donald Trump had oral sex with Bill Clinton. I guess there's a message in there, and I'm sorry this is so gross, everybody, but there's a message that someone typed in one of these emails, Trump blowing Bubba. Now, if you are from a very prim and proper old aristocracy or something, you haven't seen how everyday men text to each other, okay? But it can be pretty gruff, all right? Even men that are totally faithful, it can get pretty rough in there. And people, they tell jokes like this, and it's not just men, some women too. You say really rough things in emails, and it doesn't mean they happen. It doesn't mean you want them to happen. It is what it is. So the things which you can take out of context and suggest they happen because they're in an email is that's just no fair. All right, but even so, this is getting a headline right now, as opposed to that question. Now the overdose rate seems to have gone obviously way higher because for some unknown reason the quantity of how would you say badly manufactured, I like to use the word lethally manufactured opioids on the street, synthetic heroin, usually made with fentanyl, maybe even fentanyl, and who knows what other type of industrial products added to it, went way up during the pandemic. It went up to a shockingly high value, starting in 2020 to 2023 to 2024. Why would that be? Why would suddenly dealers want to kill their supply chain? It is unfortunate that it's passed off as drug cartels wanting to make money. People are just greedy. Really? If you're greedy, you don't want to kill the people that bring you money. So fatal overdoses don't bring money to drug dealers. They are an end. So how did so many lethally laced drugs get out on the streets during that period of time? And I offered to you my suspicion that there were forces beyond pedestrian drug dealers about this. I suspect that this is warfare. This has been warfare against the United States population. I suspect that certain demographics have been targeted in the United States of America. Overdose rates from lethal levels of fentanyl and street drugs is highest, generally speaking, not as a rule, but generally speaking, in red districts, but more specifically in red districts of swing states. That's a data point that I observed going all the way back to 2018. I haven't verified it in the last 3 or 4 years. But in 2018, the highest rates of fatal drug overdoses were in red counties in swing states. So if you go to Ohio, if you go to Pennsylvania, if you look at the counties, if you look at the districts that tend to be more red or Republican, whatever you want to call it, they had the highest rate of overdoses. And then you would look at red areas in Texas of that year, didn't have the problem. Doesn't make any sense unless there is a very specific coordinated targeting of certain demographics in the United States of America. So with this level of deaths occurring from this, how is it possible that the head of the current head of the National Institutes of Health of the United States of America doesn't know why young people are dying in these numbers? In fact, I can pull it up for you here. I'll pull it up. It's in the first few seconds of a video I just posted on YouTube.
The mission of the NIH is to do research that extends the life expectancy and improves the health of the American people, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Since 2012, the United States has seen no increase in life expectancy, none. And it collapsed during the pandemic, and only recently has it started to come back up to 2019 levels.
I mean, the data is right there. We went from, I think it was 68 or 71,000 fatal drug overdose deaths in the year 2019, which was almost an all-time record, to 94,000 and then to 115,000 deaths, mostly which were people 45 and under. And then it went down a little bit in 2024, but it's uncertain right now where things are. And I have to confess, over the last several months, I've been a little bit disconnected myself. So I don't know what the latest numbers are. Because keep in mind, it's not as if I just started after what happened with us. Our journey started in 2011. Our journey started back in 2011, maybe even 2010. That's how far back my journey goes. So for 15 years, it's been part of my life. For 15 years, it's been something that we've dealt with. Of course, there's the death and so on. So it's not as if I just 3 or 4 years ago wanted to start raising awareness, and here I am. It's a long road for me. So there are times where I have to stop. I have to stop thinking about it myself, even. But he, as the head of the National Institutes of Health in the United States of America, is in a position where this is the only thing he should be thinking about. He just said that it's his job to address life expectancy. And he is incapable of saying the number one thing which impacted life expectancy in this country. And even worse is right behind him is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who we are led to understand has struggled with addiction for decades of his own life. Robert F. Kennedy, should just remind him that it's at play. It's all very depressing. Now they're blaming long COVID. Of course, they're blaming it on a virus. And why would Jessica Rose of Clownstone, Jessica Rose, who is photographed and obviously very friendly with Gianta Bhattacharya, Jessica Rose, who did a lot of her math with a guy named Dale Ricke, friend of Robert Malone, Jessica Rose, have to make a comment like she ran the numbers and it's definitely not opioids? Why would you say something like that? And she actually said it in kind of a flippant way where she's, for freak's sake, it's not opioids. Like, that's not someone who's acting consistent with their message. Now, even if, let's just say someone ran the numbers and for somehow my statements were wrong, that it was the main reason life expectancy went down. Okay, let's say someone ran the numbers. But still, there's a 6 times increase in drug overdose deaths, and still, most of those deaths are young people. But for some odd reason, because there's another nightmare ongoing, it's not the main reason life expectancy is going down. Let's play that scenario, okay? If that were the truth, that does not mean that someone gets mad when opioids are brought up. That means that someone is crushed. If they're mad, they're mad because it's happening, because it's true. And and they don't get defensive about it. They don't get frustrated that their thing isn't more deaths or the most deaths. They show compassion for all of them. I know of people who are in their 40s who died from hospital protocols during the era of COVID, who left behind children. Those are people that died way younger than they would have otherwise, and those deaths did have an impact on dropping life expectancy. But I don't get mad when they are brought up. I want them to be seen. The point isn't that those didn't happen. They did happen also. Unfortunately, those can't get any visibility, nor can the drug epidemic get any visibility, because the story which we are allowed to hear is it came out of a laboratory because Chinese people are evil, their words. They make and Ralph Baric wanted some money or something like that, and Anthony Fauci's a criminal, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's feigning ignorance. I think I'm not impressed with his capabilities, but it would actually be a shocker if he didn't know. Let's put it this way. Gianta Bhattacharya is in a position where it's possible that someone could accidentally slip into one of these events and ask him a question about drug overdoses. Now, I'm sure that they make sure that doesn't happen, but it is possible that something like that could happen. And it would be really bad if he was not prepared with an answer. So he must have in his back pocket a way to respond to that, which in turn suggests that he has to feign a lack of awareness. 37 minutes. Gosh darn it. I'm sorry, S. I want to read your letter right now. Okay. I've decided to write since I haven't received my responses and emails. I get to so few emails, and which is why I'm glad you wrote me a letter. Thank you so much. I know you're swamped, but I felt the need to communicate this with you. I hope you receive it with good intentions. I receive all things with good intentions. At least I hope. No anthrax powder yet, so that's a good start. First of all, I love your show. She says a lot of really nice things here. I don't feel the need to trust me. It's a very, very nice few paragraphs to start out here. As much as I love to read that stuff to you, just I don't need to reread it to give the impression that everyone else loves this show, so you should love this show too. But it's very very positive. Thank you. S brought up the fact that they had a hard time finding the book on infantile autism, which they might have first heard about on Jonathan Cooey, Giggle and Biological Show. Jonathan bought a copy. I bought a copy as well. I scanned mine in. I don't think Jonathan has a book scanner like I do, the CZUR, Caesar. I think that's how it's called. And he is having a few hours a week to scan stuff in for the purposes of archival is something that fits a little bit better in my workflow. So I'm not suggesting that Jonathan Cooey needs a scanner right now, but that's something that I can do. So anyways, if you go to houstonic.live or houstonicits.com, you'll find that book, and you're welcome. It's one of the things that goes along with the support. Let's see here. Okay, she put that on there. Let's hear. So she actually, sorry, I said a she. Sorry, just gave away your gender. I gendered you. I actually think my favorite so far is Eustace Mullins. First name Eustace, last name Mullins, Mullins, Murder by Injection. And the title of the book is Murder by Injection. Looking at the interconnectedness of the relationships and the medical organizations is extremely eye-opening and disturbing. Luckily, earlier she said, she talks about having worked in medical. Never had to do vaccines, though. And yes, I think that the word vaccine is the misdirection. It's the fact that things are injected into the body. We did not evolve. We were not designed, one or the other, it's got to be one or the other, to have things injected into us. We have the ability to deal with things injected into us a little bit, or be poked. We certainly don't have the ability of things to be injected into us and then, like with a plunger, just pushed in. That's a very unnatural type of injury where, aside from maybe being bit by the fangs of a snake, there's almost no injury where you get injected with something and then a big bottle of whatever gets squeezed into the wound. So the whole nature of what a hypodermic needle is and does not match any other type of injury a mammal can acquire. And being injected with stuff is, with large quantities of various things, not a good idea, especially if it's a complex combination of substances. We're not talking being injected with water. Being injected with a pure substance like morphine may work for as a local painkiller, but as a complex biological to reprogram the body for the purposes of immunity, we just don't work like that. And I don't think it's the fact that it's a vaccine. It could be considered a vaccine. It could be a great big syringe full of pond scum, just taken at random. These types of injuries, we're just not really designed to handle them. So, and the whole GLP-1 story is really interesting as well. But we'll get into that at another time. S goes on to say they have that I on multiple occasions said that I don't want or need more information. And that's true. It's not that I don't want it. So I'm swamped. I am swamped right now, and I don't know how to. I don't know how to behave, I guess, with respect to that. But here it is anyway. Yahoo! You often discuss that there are no nuclear weapons. I differ with you on that. They go on to talk about a relative of theirs working at Los Alamos and Princeton on a project. I'm not going to say too many more details because I don't want to share too much more information. Their dad did pass away a few years ago. And they go on to talk about their dad asking them to be sworn to secrecy and being tested regularly for cancers and so on. Mother worked in a different industry. There's one sentence in here. I'm still on the first page, just about done though, that I thought was very interesting though. Or I should say I wanted to respond to. And that is, I'm going to read it, quote, I am not convinced that there was no A-bomb and the purpose was cancer research in the human genome, unquote. There's much more said after that. This is actually, so I have said before that the belief of atomic weapons provides a cover story to have a huge pile of money, which can be spent on all kinds of research, which can remain highly classified and very little transparency can be provided to it. And it is true that the Atomic Energy Commission, which then went on to become the United States Department of Energy and run the Human Genome Project, is very much connected to the Manhattan Project. This is all pretty well documented. Now, while that is, I still stand by that statement, but let's revisit some details about what I said there, okay? DNA wasn't even really conceived. I mean, the idea was being passed around for over 100 years right now, but what Watson and Crick came up with the DNA model in the early 1950s, and the World War II and the Manhattan Project completed in 1945. So the use of or I should say the start of the Manhattan Project in the late 1930s, 1941, and the use of what was described as atomic weapons in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, could not have possibly been done or orchestrated for the purposes of the Human Genome Project. Now, there's the fact that the Human Genome Project formally didn't really start until the 1980s. That's a whole nother story. But the advancement of trying to understand the human genome, the advancement of this field of genetics and genomics, didn't really kick off, at least with respect to understanding DNA, until the 1950s. So you have a little bit of a gap there. I am a believer that the nature of what's happening behind the scenes and global plans and where what the people at the real closed hearings, global hearings are talking about, changes over time based upon the state of technology. Some have suggested that there's Illuminati groups that have 100-year plans, which maybe there's visions from time to time, but the state of where things are and where they're going to go, I believe, constantly changes to reflect newer discoveries in science, newer beliefs in science, right or wrong, and so on and so forth. I don't think it's a static thing. I think it's always changing. definitely the narrative of this massive weapon being used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki provided all the motivation that anyone needed to say, okay, this war is over in 1945. But it's what happened on the day between the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I'm not going to get into all the details of the locations of those bombings, of the weight of the weapons, of the trade winds, and all of the other factors. We don't even need to get into the Indianapolis, etc. Okay, let's just put all that stuff aside right now. What matters, though, is that there was a day between Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And on that day, of all days, two of the wealthiest industrialists in the United States of America came forward and put down money to create, in New York City, a new cancer research division of Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital. It became known as the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Research Center in New York City. And, of course, Sloan and Kettering were those two industrialists. And the first person they put in charge of it was someone who was involved in the research of atomic weapons. So what had happened was it was shown that they could do whatever it is they said they could do in Hiroshima. Then the paperwork was signed the day afterwards, where there was knowledge transfer and intellectual property connection between the Manhattan Project in the U.S. military and cancer research in New York City. And then the day after that, in Nagasaki, there was the next bombing event, mass casualty event, and then the war ended. I suspect that a vast treasure trove, for lack of a better way of saying it, of information related to medical experimentation in World War II has been under protection by the United States Department of Energy and other global agencies, including and possibly even very specifically the Vatican, since World War II. I think much of it connects to Nazi Germany. There was, this is well documented, in the late 1930s, early 1940s, there was a catastrophic failure of a yellow fever vaccine in the United States of America, which caused one of the largest documented outbreaks of hepatitis in U.S. history. And I believe that a decision was made to use prisoners in Germany to determine basically as a large quantity of, incarcerated, imprisoned human test subjects. Much of that information has been buried by the Vatican ever since. And it is the Vatican which was the primary witness to, and its subordinates, that were the primary witnesses to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As even the book Hiroshima talks about, which was written by someone who married one of the Kennedy family girlfriends or something like that. Most of the key witnesses were Jesuit priests, which is just one of those weirdest things. And of course, ground zero of Nagasaki was the Roman Catholic Church in the city of Nagasaki. The Roman Catholic Church is where most of the AIDS events have been held ever since AIDS broke out in 1983, 1984. The Vatican has been the largest caretaker of people who have been clinically diagnosed with HIV. The Vatican archives are where most of this information has been kept. Ever since then, the Pontifical Scientific Academy is really the main gathering point worldwide for HIV, genetic, genomic, immunology, and so on, vaccinologist researchers to get together and talk about these types of subjects. So, yes, a ton of cancer research, a big percentage of the research actually budget for the Manhattan Project was about cancer. And cancer then ultimately does connect in with, the study of immunology, vaccinology, etc. But I think they went through and probably burned, I wouldn't say all, but there were probably tens of thousands of people that were medically experimented with various types of injections in World War II to try to determine what the heck happened with that yellow fever vaccine. And I think going all the way back then this is my hypothesis, okay, is that the light bulb went off, that it was the very nature of injecting things that caused a lot of the problems in the first place. I suspect that is what was discovered. And it should be no surprise then that it was a Polish man, Hilary Kaprowski, who the Vatican then helped escape. And Hilary Kaprowski, after being sent out of Europe in 1942, went to Brazil. And in Brazil, he worked for the Rockefeller branch of the yellow fever vaccine research in Brazil. And then in 1944, I think he came up to the United States of America and continued to work with the Rockefeller, and then collaborated with people at the Memorial Sloan Kettering, such as Cornelius P. Rhodes and Alice P. Moore. And it was Hilary Kaprowski who developed the world's first polio vaccine, which was an oral polio vaccine. And it worked. Everyone that got the oral polio vaccine from Hilary Kaprowski, no infantile paralysis. Isn't that amazing? It's almost as if you inject it, I should say if you ingest it, you don't have an injury. Huh. And this is data that I believe was being collected, and I think Hilary Kaprowski played a role. How much of this he was aware of, I'm not really sure, in getting this information and sharing this information from Germany. Now, so now you have this little bit of a conundrum where you have massive amount of military buildup, which is enabled by the belief of atomic weapons. You have a massive amount of state secrets, which are protected by beliefs and atomic weapons. You have the whole nature of global politics changing because of the whole nature of Cold War. And over time, now the whole field of genomics, every time you see some DNA, you're going to see a radiation symbol somewhere. The whole special virus cancer program was protected because of the fear of atomic weapons and radiation, if you look right on there. And it said that radiation causes cancer and so on and so forth. So I don't think that the whole thing was planned out on day one. I sincerely believe that when the Manhattan Project kicked off, there really were scientists who thought that they could create an atomic bomb. I think they genuinely believed that, and they made some small progress. At some point, they realized that they were investing a ton of money into this, and what they were getting out of it was a way to be able to store massive quantities of energy, which could then be vaulted for centuries and used at some later point in time. And it became the most convenient place to protect research related to genomics, genetics, cancers, etc. So let's read the sentence again, because it's a fair statement. Okay. So S, I'm not convinced that there is no A bomb, and the purpose was cancer research and the human genome. So cancer research was, I think, part of it, at least initially. But the human genome, I don't think they really quite had that flushed out at the time of at the end of World War II and the Manhattan Project. I have a great big book available. I've spent a lot of money on this one. This is actually a large picture book, never before seen photos, letters, etc., of Teilhard de Chardin, who was a Jesuit priest who spent most of his time in China. And it was his vision that it was going to be the Catholic Church in tandem with the physicists of the time and advancements in science, which was going to lead to the realization, the bringing God into the universe. Teilhard's view, or maybe it's a misunderstanding of his view, was that people create God by bringing God into the world through advancements of science and the promotion of love and care and so on and so forth. So imagine that particular worldview now connected with the Vatican, and think of the Vatican's role with respect to facilitating and enabling and protecting the story of whatever happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, it is what it is. It's one of the data points that I've highlighted before in some of my short videos was, well, first off, one of the main breakout locations of COVID-19, of course, was the Vatican, or in whatever the church had to do with that. But just before COVID-19, on the day that we are led to believe the zoonotic event of COVID-19 happened, and it's 8:30, I got to finish up, my goodness. On that day, the Pope was in Japan and blew out the last remaining burning embers from Nagasaki. It's almost as if the fire of Nagasaki had been burning the whole time from 1945 up until the day of the zoonotic event in October of 2019, which is the kickoff date of COVID-19. And then in the beginning of 2020, the Vatican finally announced that they were going to open up the books on Dr. Joseph Mengele and the medical experimentation of World War II. It's almost as if the Vatican participated in this act to protect the secrets of World War II for approximately 75 years, 80 years, whatever, until there was a technology or a technological platform which could then take the advancement of the human genome to the next level. These are just impossible to overlook timestamps. They're impossible. Now, it's impossible for me to ever say that there cannot be created an atomic bomb. One prop that I was going to show was that I was going to bring in a few pieces of lumber and hold them up and say, here are several 2-inch by 6-inch pieces of dimensional lumber. If I had a truckload of these, and if I ground them up in the sawdust, and if I threw them into the air, and if I enriched the air with a little extra oxygen and lit a match, I could create a bomb big enough to blow up half my town with nothing more than lumber from Home Depot or Lowe's. That's possible. So is it possible to take a very heavy metal that is enriched and processed a certain way and make an explosive out of it? Probably. But how would it really compare to explosives that can be made out of other things? It's a reasonable question. Why this irrational fear? If I should fear anything, it should be people that can make really big, nasty explosions using, commercially available sawdust and firecrackers. A whole lot more damage can be done by that. I mean, that's stuff that almost anyone can buy with a little bit of money, as opposed to something that's very, very rare. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows? But I love the fact that we can have these type of respectful disagreements. S provided a couple names for me to call. I might call them, but everyone's got a clearance, so I don't expect anyone to say anything. And to be fair, if you gave me the names of people that said that nuclear weapons didn't exist, I probably wouldn't trust them either. To be truthful with you. Anyways, thank you. This is some really some really great stuff. There was one paragraph here I didn't get to. Oh yeah. Thank you for the extending your thoughts about my father. He is responsive now. He is responsive. But I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. And they talk about their father as well. I'm sorry about that. So anyways, thank you so much for the letter. I will text you, let you know. I addressed it in this show, and I want to, I got a couple more things to do on this Sunday night. Thank you guys for being patient. I'm going through the letters again. And again, thank you. Hopefully, go back to the beginning and you can hear my little apologize for being derailed a little bit this week. But I don't think that's going to, I think we're going to call an end to that today. And I see a lot of good messages in here. How did the Vatican end up with Mengele's notebook? Well, Joseph Mengele, the angel of death, escaped Germany with the Vatican. So I'm just throwing that one out there. Why did the Vatican help the guy who ran all of the horrific medical experimentation in World War II escape to South America? Why did they do that? And we are been told that on the journey, Joseph Mengele lost his notebook. He was grabbing a coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, and he just left his notebooks with all his World War II Nazi experimentation. That's dark humor, by the way. It's really not funny, but that's what we're supposed to believe. That I just forgot about it. And what a surprise. The Vatican helped him move to South America. The Vatican protected him. Why did the Vatican spend money protecting him? Think of how many brownie points that cost the Vatican reputation for keeping Joseph Mengele protected. And someone along the way realized, oh wow, here's Mengele's notebook. And I'm not saying it was one notebook or if it was one box. I don't really know how it was captured, but they put it into their vaults. Right next to probably the photos of this is what really happened in Nagasaki. I haven't talked about this stuff for a while, so I may have, I'm going to have little details wrong. And then when you realize that the other person that they helped get to South America was Hillary Kaprowski. I don't believe everything was known at the time that they were going through this. Things are discovered along the way. I suspect that they had nothing close to an explosive device in 1945, and we're told, okay, you have to stage an explosion because this is what's going to happen. And then that's another amazing part of history, because the receipts show that the Manhattan Project bought enough TNT, enough explosive material to stage Nagasaki and Hiroshima. We know that. And even worse, it was manufactured at the Longhorn munitions plant in Taylor, Texas, that was on the land that was owned by Lady Bird Johnson's family. Lady Bird Johnson, who married Lyndon Johnson. None of this stuff comes up when talking about JFK conspiracies. Why? I mean, how much more interesting can you get? I see 1,000 million questions in here. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for listening. Thank you, S, for the letter. And you guys behave yourself. Have a nice night. And we are going to be back to our core business on Monday, even if people want to talk about whatever is blowing bubbles right now. All right, guys. Thank you. Take care. Have a great one. God bless.